Hi, my name's Emma, and I'm a huge book nerd, and I have a cold.
You're my library, always open for business, but you never show it. You're just sitting with it, but I know the score, and you're killing.
As you may know from some of my previous videos, I am not a huge fan of YA contemporary books, so today I thought I'd share with you the YA contemporary books that I actually think are worth reading. So we will just get straight into it. The first YA contemporary that I think is definitely worth reading is We Were Liars by E. Lockhart. And this is one of those books that I picked up and I read in one sitting because I just could not put it down. It's so good, it's so interesting, and it's so surprising. It's really different from a lot of books that I've read. I don't know if I can compare it to anything that I've read before. I will not describe the plot to you because I think it's way more fun to go into this book blind, but I'll read the back cover for you. It says, "We are Sinclairs. No one is needy, no one is wrong. We live, at least in the summertime, on a private island off the coast of Massachusetts. Perhaps that is all you need to know, except that some of us are liars." So I'll let you decide if you find that synopsis interesting, but I definitely think that this book is worth a read. And it's short, so if you don't like it, you're not really wasting that much time. The next YA book that I definitely think is worth the read is Everything Everything by Nicola Yoon. And this recently came out as a movie as well, and I have seen the movie and it was pretty meh. They could have done a better job. And also I feel like the story just translates better in a book than it does in a movie. Let's just talk about how pretty this cover is. This is one of my all-time favorite covers, if not my all-time favorite cover. It's just so pretty, and like all these little details relate to the book, and it's just so well done. I've read some of Nicola Yoon's other books, like The Sun is Also a Star. Is that what it's called? The Sun is a Star? I don't know, something like that. And I didn't like it as much. It was okay. There was just nothing super special. But this was really good. I don't want to tell you too much about it because I think this is another fun one to go into sort of blind. But this is about a girl who has a disease where she cannot go outside because she'll get really sick if she goes outside. So she's basically lived trapped, confined in her house for her entire life. And then this boy moves in next door and she starts having conversations with him via text or via IM. And you know, the story progresses from there, and it sounds like it's just super like a fluffy, cheesy read, but there's more to it than that, and I think like halfway through the book is where it starts to get like really, really interesting. But the first half is really sweet too, so just like, I think a lot of people will like this. The next book on this list is Wonder by R.J. Palacio, and I definitely think that this book is worth reading. It's not my favorite book of all time, but I think that it's really well written and it's also really important. It's about a boy who has some facial disfigurations, and he has been homeschooled his whole life, and now he's finally starting school for the first time ever, public school. And so he has to deal with the way people look at him, bullies, just being physically different in a world where your physical appearance is so important. And this book, one of the things I really like about this book is it has chapters from many different people's perspectives. It keeps shifting perspectives. So you get a look at like how his family feels about all of this and how his friends feel, how his sister's boyfriend feels. Like there's just a lot of really interesting perspectives. And this is being made into a movie soon too, and I cannot wait for that. The trailer for that looked really promising. So yeah, you should definitely check this out. And the next book on the list is Eleanor Park by Rainbow Rowell, and I love Rainbow Rowell. I know a lot of people don't like her writing, and I honestly have absolutely no idea why, because every book that I've read by her so far I have at least enjoyed, if not like really loved. This is one of my all-time favorite books. This is probably the sweetest YA love story I've ever read. It's really honest, and it has all of the flaws that you would expect to be present in a real high school relationship. It's not just like this perfect fantasy relationship that an author made up and put in a book. It's so good. I also love that this has a diverse main character. Park is Asian, and there's a lot about this book that's also good to go into blind, but It's just really beautiful, and I highly recommend this one. While we're on Rainbow Rowell, another YA book of hers that I definitely recommend is Fangirl. Fangirl is about a girl who writes fan fiction, and she and her twin sister start college, and she's an introvert and she's really scared of like putting herself out there, as many introverts are, and so college is an odd time for her, and she thinks she's gonna room with her sister, and she ends up not rooming with her sister, and so she's kind of in this strange, independent new step in her life, and she doesn't know how to handle it. I read it my sophomore year of college, and it was still really relevant and cool to read. So if you're starting college, you're a freshman in college, gonna start college soon, then I highly recommend you check out this book, because I'm pretty sure as a book nerd you will relate to it. Usually I am not a big fan of John Green. I have read all of his books that he's put out so far, just so that I could say with authority that I don't think he's the best writer. But that being said, there is one of his books that I do really recommend, and that is The Fault in Our Stars. The Fault in Our Stars is really sad. You're gonna cry a lot if you read this, and I think it's one of those like guilty pleasure books for me, and that sounds so messed up because it's such a sad book, but there's something about this book it's super cheesy, yes, but it's also something about it really hits your heartstrings and is really powerful. So even though this is just as cheesy as your typical John Green book, there's something a little extra to this one. And if you don't know what this is about, it's about two kids who have cancer who meet together through a support group, and they fall in love, and yeah. The next YA book I highly recommend, and if you have not read this, you absolutely have to, or I don't know, you shouldn't, I don't know. That is The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton. The Outsiders is a book that many of you have probably read in school, but if you haven't, you need to read this. It's one of my all-time favorite books. It's about a boy named Pony Boy. Yes, that's his real name. And his brothers Soda Pop and Dairy, and the rest of their gang, which includes one of my favorite characters, Johnny. And it's about how they deal with their lives as greasers. And it's kind of like, to compare it to like West Side Story, the Jets versus the Sharks, it's the greasers versus the Socs, high class versus low class. It's about how these boys deal with their everyday life, and then something happens and it gets really exciting and sad and amazing. And if you know the famous quote, "Stay golden, pony boy," that's what this is from. So read it. The next YA book I think you should read is The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime by Mark Hayden. And this book is about a boy who has autism, and he goes on a journey to try to find out who killed his dog. It's really beautiful, and this has been made into a play, which I haven't seen, sadly, because it looks really good. I love this book. I think it's really great. I love books that are about autism because my brother had autism, and I just think that it's a really well-written book, and it's short and great and really funny, and I highly recommend it. What a description, Emma. You're so good at this. The next book is a bit of a different one. It is Ender's Game by Orson Scott Wells, and this book, it's a futuristic dystopian book about a boy who is destined to become the commander of an army. And it's basically about how in the future, children are bred essentially to be a certain way, to fight to save their planet and stuff like that. And this book is really interesting, and I was totally engrossed from page one. I feel like this would be classified as like a boy book because it's mostly about boys. There is a girl character that we get to see, but it's mostly about boys and about fighting and war and space. But I definitely think that this is the kind of book that like I'm into. If you like Ready Player One and stuff like The Martian, this is like the YA version of that, I think. It's just really fun, and there's a lot of good little twists and turns, and it's very exciting. Highly recommend. Really enjoyed this book. Then of course we couldn't have a YA book recommendations video without A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. And I feel like I don't have to say too much about this because I have made an entire review gushing about how much I love this book. But basically it is about a boy dealing with the grief of losing his mother to cancer. And a monster visits him in the night, and that's about all I'm gonna tell you. If you want to know more, you can go check out my review, which I will link down below in the description bar. I have two more books that I don't own that I do want to talk about. First is Exit Pursued by a Bear. It's about a girl who is raped her senior year of high school and how she goes through her senior year after having that happen. And I think that that book is extremely relevant because there's so much sexual assault that goes on that people don't hear about and people don't know how to deal with it. And I think that reading a YA book from that perspective can be really helpful to a lot of high schoolers and a lot of young adults. So I highly recommend checking that out. I think it was really well written. There were a couple things that I did have some issues with in that book, but for the most part, I think it was really great. I won't talk about them because they're kind of spoilery. But if you've read the book and want to know, you can message me and we'll chat about it. But I think it's a really relevant read and I definitely think you should check it out. The last book I want to mention is The Perks of Being a Wallflower, which I don't know why I don't own that book because I love that book. I love that movie too. I think it's really well done. But that book is about a boy starting high school who has been dealing with mental illness for a lot of his life. And it's basically just about how he makes friends and his journey through his first year of high school. And it's really cool and there's a lot of twists and turns that I won't tell you about because it'd be super spoilery. But I really enjoyed that book. I think it's really great, really well written. It's interesting because it's all written in letters from that the boy has written himself. And I also highly recommend the movie. If you have seen the book, you haven't seen the movie, you should definitely watch the movie. It's really good. I loved it. So those are all the YA books that I'd like to share with you today. If you have any more recommendations for me for YA books that I should check out, leave them down below in the comments. I'd be really interested to hear about those. And if not, please like and subscribe and keep watching my videos. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!